Hello, friend. Today we'll embark on a true adventure, exploring the lives of the most important popes in history, the theories surrounding them, and how their journeys came to an end. We'll uncover fascinating details about such influential figures. And of course, if you enjoy the content, don't forget to share and leave a like to help our channel grow. Now, without further ado, let's get started. Saint Peter, 3367. We start with the Prince of the Apostles, Simon, renamed Peter by Jesus, the rock upon which the church would be built. A humble fisherman from Bethsaida in Galilee, Peter was impulsive, fiercely loyal, and deeply human. He walked with Christ, witnessed miracles, denied him 3 times during the crucifixion, but redeemed himself with tears of repentance. After the resurrection, Peter emerged as the leader of the early Christians, preaching in Jerusalem and, according to tradition, founding the church in Rome. As the first bishop of Rome, though not formally called Pope, Peter's authority among the apostles was undeniable. His leadership was marked by bold preaching in an era of persecution, organizing the fledgling Christian community in secret. But how did his life end? Tradition holds that Peter was crucified upside down around 67 AD in Nero's circus, where St. Peter's Basilica now stands. He reportedly requested this position out of humility, feeling unworthy to die as Jesus did. But there are fascinating theories. Some scholars question whether Peter ever reached Rome, noting scarce archaeological evidence. Others suggest he may have died in Jerusalem, with the Roman tradition crafted to bolster the church's authority. There's even speculation that the remains found under St. Peter's Basilica in 1968 might belong to another martyr, not Peter. Truth or legend, Peter remains the cornerstone of the church, a simple man who defied an empire. 2. Saint Clement, on 988 and 97. Next, we meet Saint Clement, one of Peter's early successors, who became pope around 88 AD. Likely a freedman converted to Christianity, Clement was an intellectual bridging Judaism and Christianity. His letter to the Corinthians, known as 1 Clement, is one of the earliest Christian texts outside the New Testament, showcasing his authority to settle disputes in distant communities. His papacy unfolded amid persecutions under Emperor Domitian, yet Clement kept the church united, emphasizing charity and discipline. His death, however, is steeped in legend. Tradition claims he was exiled to Crimea, forced to labor in mines, and then thrown into the sea with an anchor tied to his neck, around 97 AD, for refusing to renounce his faith. Miraculously, the sea reportedly parted, revealing his body in a divine tomb. Theories abound. Some historians argue Clement died naturally in Rome, with the martyrdom story embellished to inspire believers. Others suggest the anchor, his symbol, represents his steadfast leadership rather than a literal death. There's even speculation that he survived exile and died in obscurity, but the church favored a heroic narrative. Regardless, Clement is revered as an early church father, his letter still studied today. 3. Saint Leo I the Great, 440–461. Now, we encounter Leo I the Great, one of the most influential popes of late antiquity. Born in Tuscany around 400, Leo was a brilliant administrator and theologian. Elected pope in 440, he led during the Roman Empire's collapse, strengthening the church's role. Leo solidified papal authority, declaring the Bishop of Rome as Peter's direct successor, with primacy over other bishops. His papacy was monumental. He defended Christian orthodoxy at the Council of Chalcedon, 451, clarifying Christ's nature against heresies. His most legendary moment came in 452, when he faced Attila the Hun near Rome. Through diplomacy, and legend says divine visions, Leo persuaded Attila to spare the city. In 455, he mitigated the Vandal sack of Rome. Leo died of natural causes in 461 and was buried in St. Peter's, one of the first popes so honored. Theories? Some claim Leo used bribes, not miracles, to stop Attila. Others argue his influence was overstated to enhance papal prestige. A captivating theory suggests Leo possessed secret documents, now lost, detailing deals with barbarians, explaining his diplomatic prowess. Leo the Great blended faith and politics. leaving a legacy that endures. 4. St. Gregory the Great, 590–604. Next, Gregory the Firm, another great, who transformed the Church in the early Middle Ages. Born in Rome around 540 to a noble family, Gregory abandoned a political career to become a monk. Elected Pope in 590, reluctantly he brought his spirituality and vision to the role. Gregory reformed the liturgy, popularizing Gregorian chant, and organized the Church to address poverty and barbarian invasions. His papacy was defined by charity. He fed Rome's poor and negotiated with the Lombards to protect the city. Gregory also sent missionaries, like St. Augustine of Canterbury, to convert the Anglo-Saxons in England. His writings, such as the Dialogues, blended theology with miracle stories, shaping medieval spirituality. Exhausted by illness, likely gout, Gregory died in 604 and was soon canonized. Theories? Some believe Gregory exaggerated miracle tales to bolster faith in turbulent times. Others suggest he maintained a network of monk spies to monitor barbarian kingdoms. A compelling theory posits that Gregory battled depression, hinted out in his letters lamenting the papacy's burden. His humility and impact make him one of the most beloved popes. 5. Leo III, 795–816. We close this block with Leo III, a pope who reshaped European history. Born in Rome to humble roots, Leo became pope in 795 amid political turmoil. His reign is best known for a pivotal moment. On Christmas Day 800, in St. Peter's Basilica, Leo crowned Charlemagne as Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, forging an unprecedented alliance between church and state. Leo's papacy was fraught with challenges. He faced revolts in Rome, narrowly escaping blinding by nobles accusing him of corruption. Charlemagne's protection saved him, but Leo remained under the emperor's influence. He died of natural causes in 816 after a 21-year reign, leaving a legacy that defined medieval Europe. Theories? Some argue Leo crowned Charlemagne to secure his own survival, not out of spiritual vision. Others believe he was manipulated by Roman nobles, and his alleged corruption may have been exaggerated by rivals. A curious theory suggests Leo guarded secret relics to legitimize Charlemagne's coronation. Leo III, a pope of courage and controversy, opened the door to the Middle Ages. 1. Gregory VII, 1073–1085. We begin with Gregory VII, born Hildebrand of Sovana around 1015 in Tuscany, a monk who rose to become one of the most transformative popes. A fierce advocate for church reform, Hildebrand was elected pope in 1073, taking the name Gregory VII. His papacy was defined by the Gregorian reforms, aimed at purging corruption, ending simony, the buying of church offices, and enforcing clerical celibacy. His most audacious move was asserting papal supremacy over secular rulers, famously clashing with Holy Roman Emperor Henry IV in the investiture controversy over who could appoint bishops. Gregory's bold stance led to dramatic events. In 1076, he excommunicated Henry, sparking a crisis. Henry famously trekked to Canossa in 1077, standing barefoot in the snow to beg forgiveness, though their conflict later resumed. Gregory's reforms strengthened the church, but made enemies. In 1084, Henry invaded Rome, forcing Gregory into exile in Salerno, where he died in 1085, reportedly saying, "I have loved justice and hated iniquity, therefore I die in exile." His death was likely from natural causes, possibly exhaustion or illness. Theories swirl around Gregory's end. Some suggest Henry's allies poisoned him in Salerno, though no evidence supports this. Others argue his reforms were a power grab, not a moral crusade, alienating nobles and clergy alike. A fascinating theory posits that Gregory had secret alliances with Norman rulers, using them to counter Henry, which explains his refuge in Salerno. Gregory VII's legacy as a reformer endures, but his uncompromising zeal reshaped the church at great personal cost. 2. Urban II, 1088–1099. Next we meet Urban II, born Odo of Châtillon around 1035 in France, a Cluniac monk who became pope in 1088. Urban inherited a church divided by the investiture controversy and the anti-pope Clement III, backed by Emperor Henry IV. His papacy is best known for launching the First Crusade in 1095 at the Council of Clermont, calling Christians to reclaim Jerusalem from Muslim control. His fiery speech, promising spiritual rewards, ignited a movement that reshaped medieval history. Urban's diplomatic skill kept the church united, navigating tensions with secular powers and promoting Gregorian reforms. He traveled extensively, strengthening papal influence in France and Italy. Urban died in 1099, shortly after the Crusaders captured Jerusalem, likely of natural causes, possibly a fever, in Rome. His death was peaceful, but his call to crusade left a complex legacy of faith and violence. Theories about Urban are intriguing. Some historians question whether he foresaw the Crusade's bloody consequences, suggesting he underestimated the zeal his words unleashed. Others propose he used the Crusade to divert European conflicts outward, consolidating papal power. A curious theory claims Urban received secret envoys from Byzantine Emperor Alexios I, whose pleas for aid shaped the Crusade's timing. Urban II's vision united Christendom, but sowed seeds of centuries-long conflict. 3. Innocent III, 1198 to 1216. Now we encounter Innocent III, born Lotario dei Conti around 1160 in Gavignano, Italy, a nobleman and scholar who became one of the most powerful popes ever. Elected in 1198 at age 37, Innocent viewed the papacy as a supreme authority over kings and emperors. His papacy was a high point of medieval papal power, marked by assertive interventions in European politics and church governance. Innocent launched the Fourth Crusade, 1202-1204, which infamously sacked Christian Constantinople, a disaster he later lamented. He also initiated the Albigensian Crusade against the Cathar heretics in France, showcasing his zeal for orthodoxy. His approval of the Franciscan and Dominican orders bolstered church spirituality. Innocent's diplomatic triumphs included forcing King John of England to accept papal authority and mediating disputes across Europe. He died suddenly in 1216 in Perugia, likely of malaria or a heart ailment, at age 56. Theories abound about Innocent's death. Some whisper he was poisoned by rivals fearing his power, though evidence is thin. Others argue his aggressive policies alienated allies, suggesting the Fourth Crusade's failure haunted him, hastening his demise. A compelling theory posits that Innocent kept a secret archive of political correspondences, now lost, which gave him leverage over kings. Innocent III's reign marked the zenith of papal authority, but his ambition left a polarized legacy. 4. Celestine V, 1294. Next we meet Celestine V, born Pietro Angelerio around 1215 in Molise, Italy, a hermit whose brief papacy is one of history's most poignant tales. A devout monk, Pietro lived in caves seeking solitude and prayer. Elected Pope in 1294 at age 79, after a 2-year conclave deadlock, he took the name Celestine V, hoping to reform the corrupt church. His papacy, lasting 5 months, was a disaster. Unprepared for politics, Celestine was manipulated by cardinals and King Charles II of Naples. Overwhelmed, Celestine made history by resigning, the first pope to do so willingly, citing his inability to govern. His abdication decree stunned the church. He hoped to return to his hermit life, but his successor, Boniface VIII, fearing Celestine's influence, imprisoned him in Fumone Castle. Celestine died there in 1296, likely of natural causes, possibly malnutrition or infection, at age 81. Theories about Celestine's end are gripping. Many believe Boniface orchestrated his death, with legends claiming a nail was driven into his skull, though forensic analysis of his remains found no such evidence. Others suggest Celestine's resignation was coerced, not voluntary, by Boniface's allies. A romantic theory posits that Celestine left secret writings on spiritual reform hidden in a monastery. Canonized in 1313, Celestine V remains a symbol of humility and the perils of power. 5. Boniface VIII, 1294–1303. We close with Boniface VIII, born Benedetto Caetani around 1230 in Anagni, Italy, a cunning lawyer who became pope in 1294 after Celestine III's resignation. Boniface's papacy was marked by bold assertions of papal supremacy, most famously in his bull Unam Sanctum, 1302, declaring that salvation required submission to the pope. His ambition clashed with King Philip IV of France, sparking a historic feud over taxation and authority. Boniface's reign saw triumphs, like the first Jubilee year in 1300, drawing pilgrims to Rome, but also failures. His conflict with Philip led to his humiliation in 1303, when French troops led by Guillaume de Nogaret attacked him in Anagni, an event known as the Outrage of Anagni. Boniface was briefly captured and beaten but released. He died weeks later in Rome, likely of shock, fever, or heart failure at age 73. Theories about Boniface's death are dramatic. Some claim Philip's agents poisoned him after Anagni, though no proof exists. Others suggest his mental state collapsed from the humiliation, hastening his end. A wild theory proposes Boniface was involved in occult practices, with enemies spreading rumors of demonic pacts to discredit him. Boniface VIII's assertive reign pushed papal power to its limits, but his downfall marked a turning point for the Church's authority. Alexander VI, 1492–1503. We begin with Alexander VI, born Rodrigo Borgia in 1431 in Jativa, Spain, a cunning and ambitious figure whose papacy is synonymous with scandal. Elected pope in 1492, reportedly through bribery, Alexander was a master of Renaissance politics. A member of the infamous Borgia family, he used his position to advance his children, Cesare, Lucrezia, and others, securing their power through alliances and conquests. His papacy coincided with Columbus's voyages, and he issued the 1493 bull Inter Caetera, dividing the New World between Spain and Portugal. Alexander's reign was marked by lavish patronage of the arts, supporting figures like Michelangelo, but also by corruption and debauchery. Rumors of orgies, poisonings, and incest dogged his reputation. He strengthened papal authority in Italy, but alienated reformers. Alexander died suddenly in 1503, likely of malaria or a fever, though some accounts suggest poisoning during a banquet. His body, bloated and disfigured, was hastily buried in Rome. Theories about Alexander's death are sensational. Many believe he and his son Cesare were accidentally poisoned by a toxin meant for a rival, a plot gone awry. Others argue his enemies, fed up with Borgia excesses, orchestrated his demise, though evidence is scarce. A wild theory claims Alexander dabbled in alchemy, and a failed experiment caused his death. Alexander VI's papacy, steeped in intrigue, remains a symbol of Renaissance decadence and cunning. Tus, Julius II, 1503–1513. Next, we meet Julius II, born Giuliano della Rovere in 1443 in Albisola, Italy, a fiery warrior pope who transformed the papacy. Elected in 1503, Julius was a stark contrast to Alexander VI, focusing on military conquest and artistic grandeur. Known as the warrior pope, he led armies to reclaim papal territories, forging the papal states into a political force. His aggressive diplomacy, including the League of Cambrai, countered French and Venetian power. Julius's patronage of the arts was legendary. He commissioned Michelangelo's Sistine chapel ceiling and Raphael's frescoes and began rebuilding St. Peter's Basilica under Bramante. His vision shaped Renaissance Rome, but his militarism drained papal coffers. Julius died in 1513, likely of a fever or gout, after a decade of relentless activity. His death was mourned, but his legacy endured in Rome's cultural splendor. Theories about Julius are intriguing. Some suggest his military campaigns were a distraction from internal church corruption, buying time for reforms he never pursued. Others claim he survived an assassination attempt by poisoned wine, weakening his health. A curious theory posits that Julius kept a secret journal, now lost, detailing his battles and artistic commissions, which could reveal his true motives. Julius II's bold reign made the papacy a temporal power, but his warrior spirit left a divisive mark. 3. Leo X, 1513 to 1521. Now we encounter Leo X, born Giovanni de' Medici in 1475 in Florence, a scion of the powerful Medici family. Elected Pope in 1513 at age 37, Leo was a cultured humanist who reveled in Renaissance splendor. His papacy was a golden age of art and learning, with patronage of artists like Raphael and scholars like Erasmus. However, his lavish spending on festivals, art, and indulgences plunged the papacy into debt. Leo's reign is infamous for the sale of indulgences, which sparked Martin Luther's 95 Theses in 1517, igniting the Protestant Reformation. Leo underestimated the crisis, excommunicating Luther in 1521, but failing to stem the revolt. He died suddenly that same year, likely of malaria or a respiratory infection, at age 46, leaving the church fractured. His opulent lifestyle overshadowed his diplomatic efforts to maintain papal influence. Theories about Leo's death are compelling. Some whisper he was poisoned by rivals within the Medici circle, fearing his debts would ruin the family. Others suggest his indulgent lifestyle, feasts and hunting, hastened a natural decline. A fascinating theory claims Leo was aware of Luther's threat, but was bribed by German princes to ignore it, a secret buried with him. Leo X's reign, a blend of brilliance and excess, marked the beginning of the Church's greatest schism. 4. Clement VII, 1523 to 1534. Next we meet Clement VII, born Giulio de' Medici in 1478 in Florence, another Medici pope whose reign was marred by calamity. Elected in 1523, Clement was a skilled diplomat but indecisive leader. His papacy faced the escalating Reformation and political turmoil in Europe. Caught between Emperor Charles V and King Francis I of France, Clement's alliances wavered, leading to disaster. In 1527, Charles V's troops sacked Rome, imprisoning Clement in Castel Sant'Angelo, a humiliation that weakened papal authority. Clement's refusal to annul Henry VIII's marriage to Catherine of Aragon sparked England's break with Rome, birthing the Anglican Church. His patronage of Michelangelo, including the Last Judgment, was a highlight, but his political failures overshadowed it. Clement died in 1534, likely of illness, possibly cancer, at age 56. Theories about Clement's end are dramatic. Some believe he was poisoned by Charles V's agents, though evidence is thin. Others argue his imprisonment during the sack of Rome left him psychologically broken, hastening his decline. A curious theory suggests Clement hid secret correspondence with Henry VIII, offering a compromise that was never delivered. Clement VII's reign, marked by missteps, saw the Church lose ground in a changing world. 5. Paul III, 1534-1549. We close with Paul III, born Alessandro Farnese in 1468 in Canino, Italy, a shrewd reformer who guided the Church through crisis. Elected in 1534, Paul was a Renaissance prince with a checkered past, including fathering children before his papacy. His reign marked the Counter-Reformation's start, addressing Protestant gains. He convened the Council of Trent, 1545, which reformed church doctrine and discipline, revitalizing Catholicism. Paul's patronage supported Michelangelo's work and approved the Jesuit order, bolstering missionary efforts. His political maneuvering strengthened papal influence, though nepotism tainted his legacy. Paul died in 1549, likely of heart failure, or old age at 81, after a long and impactful reign. His death was peaceful, but his reforms shaped the Church for centuries. Theories about Paul are intriguing. Some claim he survived an assassination plot by disgruntled cardinals opposed to Trent's reforms. Others suggest his nepotism was a calculated strategy to secure allies, not mere favoritism. A wild theory posits that Paul consulted astrologers to time the Council of Trent, a practice frowned upon by the Church. Paul III's pragmatic leadership steadied the Church, but his flaws remind us of its human core. Pius V, 1566-1572. We begin with Pius V, born Antonio Ghislieri in 1504 in Bosco, Italy, a humble shepherd who became a Dominican friar and zealous reformer. Elected Pope in 1566, Pius was a key figure in the Counter-Reformation, implementing the Council of Trent's decrees to combat Protestantism. His papacy was marked by strict morality, rooting out corruption and enforcing clerical discipline. He standardized the Roman Missal, shaping Catholic liturgy for centuries. Pius's most famous achievement was organizing the Holy League, leading to the 1571 Battle of Lepanto, where Christian forces defeated the Ottoman navy, a victory attributed to his prayers to the Virgin Mary. His uncompromising stance, including excommunicating Queen Elizabeth I in 1570, strengthened Catholic resolve but alienated some allies. Pius died in 1572, likely of kidney disease or cancer, at age 68, and was canonized in 1712. Theories about Pius's death are compelling. Some suggest his rigorous fasting and asceticism weakened his health, hastening his end. Others claim Protestant spies plotted to poison him, though no evidence supports this. A fascinating theory posits that Pius kept a secret diary detailing visions of Lepanto's victory, which influenced his strategy. Pius V's austere leadership fortified the church, but his rigidity left a polarizing legacy. 2. Gregory XIII, 1572-1585. Next, we meet Gregory III, born Ugo Boncompagni in 1502 in Bologna, Italy, a lawyer and scholar who became pope in 1572. Gregory's papacy is best known for the Gregorian calendar, introduced in 1582 to correct the Julian calendar's inaccuracies. This reform, still in use today, faced resistance from Protestant nations, but showcased the Church's intellectual authority. Gregory also supported Jesuit missions, spreading Catholicism globally. His reign strengthened the Counter-Reformation, funding seminaries and enforcing Trent's reforms. However, his political alliances, particularly with Spain, drew criticism, and his failure to curb violence during the French Wars of Religion marred his legacy. Gregory died in 1585, likely of a stroke or heart ailment, at age 83, after a reign marked by progress and challenges. Theories about Gregory's end are intriguing. Some believe his death was hastened by stress over the calendar's slow adoption. Others suggest he was poisoned by French agents opposed to his Spanish alliances, though this lacks proof. A curious theory claims Gregory consulted astronomers with ties to occult circles, raising eyebrows in the church. Gregory XIII's calendar reform defined his papacy, but his diplomatic struggles highlight the era's complexities. 3. Sixtus V, 1585-1590. Now, we encounter Sixtus V, born Felice Peretti in 1521 in Grottomare, Italy, a Franciscan friar from humble origins who became a formidable pope. Elected in 1585, Sixtus was a visionary administrator, transforming Rome into a Baroque capital. He built the new St. Peter's Dome, improved infrastructure, and reorganized the Curia, creating the modern structure of Vatican administration. His financial acumen filled papal coffers, funding ambitious projects. Sixtus's papacy was also marked by ruthless justice, cracking down on banditry and corruption with executions and strict laws. He supported the Counter-Reformation, backing the Jesuits and Spanish Armada against England, though the latter failed. Sixtus died suddenly in 1590, likely of malaria, at age 68, leaving Rome revitalized, but his reforms incomplete. Theories about Sixtus's death are dramatic. Some whisper he was poisoned by rivals fearing his authoritarian rule, though malaria is the likely cause. Others suggest his intense work ethic and stress over the Armada's defeat weakened him. A wild theory posits that Sixtus hid a secret treasury, its location dying with him, fueling Vatican wealth rumors. Sixtus V's short but dynamic reign reshaped the papacy, blending brilliance with severity. 4. Urbani VIII, 1623-1644. Next, we meet Urbani VIII, born Maffeo Barberini in 1568 in Florence, Italy, a cultured nobleman who became pope in 1623. Urban's papacy bridged the Counter-Reformation and the 30 Years' War, a turbulent period of religious and political strife. His patronage of the arts particularly Bernini's Baroque masterpieces, transformed Rome with projects like the Baldacchino in St. Peter's Basilica. Urban also fortified the Papal States, building Castel Sant'Angelo's defenses. His reign is infamous for the Galileo affair. Urban, initially supportive of Galileo, condemned him in 1633 for heliocentrism, forcing his house arrest. Urban's diplomatic missteps, favoring France over Spain, alienated allies and fueled war. He died in 1644, likely of heart failure or stroke, at age 76, amid criticism for nepotism and war debts. Theories about Urban's end are gripping. Some believe his guilt over Galileo's trial, combined with war pressures, hastened his decline. Others suggest Spanish agents poisoned him, though evidence is scarce. A fascinating theory claims Urban secretly admired Galileo's ideas, but bowed to conservative cardinals, a conflict that tormented him. Urban VIII's reign, a mix of splendor and scandal, reflects the Baroque era's contradictions. 5. Innocent X, 1644-1655. We close with Innocent X, born Giovanni Battista Pamphilj in 1574 in Rome, a lawyer who became pope in 1644. Innocent's papacy followed the 30 Years' War, focusing on restoring papal authority amid European upheaval. He condemned the Peace of Westphalia, 1648, which ended the war but weakened church influence, showing his commitment to Catholic primacy. His patronage continued Rome's Baroque transformation, commissioning Borromini's works. Innocent's reign was overshadowed by his relationship with Olimpia Maidalchini, his sister-in-law, whose influence fueled rumors of scandal. His cautious diplomacy avoided new wars but limited papal power. Innocent died in 1655, likely of gout or kidney failure at age 80, leaving a stable but diminished papacy. Theories about Innocent's death are intriguing. Some claim Olympia poisoned him to secure her wealth, though his age suggests natural causes. Others suggest his condemnation of Westphalia was a desperate bid to reclaim influence, reflecting inner turmoil. A curious theory posits that Innocent kept a secret archive of political intrigues, destroyed by Olympia after his death. Innocent X's reign, marked by restraint and controversy, navigated a shifting world. Alexander VII, 1655-1667. We begin with Alexander VII, born Fabio Chigi in 1599 in Siena, Italy, a scholar and diplomat from a prominent banking family. Elected Pope in 1655, Alexander was a cultured figure who sought to restore papal prestige after the tumultuous reign of Innocent X. His papacy was marked by lavish patronage of the arts, transforming Rome into a Baroque masterpiece. He commissioned Bernini's iconic colonnades in St. Peter's Square and supported architectural projects that defined the Eternal City. Alexander's reign, however, faced challenges. His nepotism, favoring Chigi relatives, drew criticism, and his diplomatic efforts to mediate European conflicts, like the Franco-Spanish War, often faltered. He also clashed with France's Louis XIV over the Corsican Guard incident, leading to a humiliating papal apology. Alexander died in 1667, likely of heart failure or kidney disease at age 68, leaving Rome beautified, but the papacy weakened politically. Theories about Alexander's death are intriguing. Some suggest his stress over conflicts with Louis XIV hastened his decline. Others claim his nepotism hid a secret financial scheme to bolster Siena's economy, which collapsed after his death. A fascinating theory posits that Alexander kept a private journal of mystical visions, influencing his artistic commissions, though no such document survives. Alexander VII's Baroque legacy endures, but his political missteps highlight the era's complexities. 2. Clement X, 1670-1676. Next, we meet Clement X, born Emilio Altieri in 1590 in Rome, a seasoned administrator who became pope in 1670 at age 79. Elected after a contentious conclave, Clement was a compromise candidate known for his piety and moderation. His papacy focused on spiritual renewal, promoting missionary work and canonizing saints like Francis de Sales. He also supported Poland against Ottoman incursions, strengthening Catholic unity in Eastern Europe. Clement's reign was limited. By his advanced age and reliance on his nephew, Cardinal Paluzzi Altieri, whose influence sparked nepotism accusations. His diplomatic efforts avoided major conflicts, but his lack of vigor meant few bold reforms. Clement died in 1676, likely of gout or natural causes, at age 86, after a quiet but stable pontificate. Theories about Clement's end are subtle. Some believe his nephew deliberately isolated him to control papal decisions, weakening his health. Others suggest Clement's support for Poland was driven by a secret alliance with Habsburgs, undocumented to avoid French backlash. A curious theory claims Clement received prophetic warnings about Ottoman advances, influencing his policies, though no evidence supports this. Clement VI's gentle reign steadied the Church, but his legacy is overshadowed by more dynamic popes. Crises, Innocent Hambon Hans, 1676-1689. Now we encounter Innocent Infines, born Benedetto Odescalchi in 1611 in Como, Italy, a devout and austere reformer who became pope in 1676. Known as the Pope of the Poor, Innocent rejected nepotism, lived frugally, and focused on moral and financial reform. His papacy was a high point of counter-Reformation zeal, enforcing clerical discipline and combating corruption within the Church. Innocent's most significant achievement was organizing the Holy League, leading to the 1683 Battle of Vienna, where Christian forces defeated the Ottomans, halting their advance into Europe. His defiance of Louis XIV, particularly over Gallicanism, French church autonomy, earned him enemies. Innocent died in 1689, likely of kidney stones or infection at age 78, and was beatified in 1956 for his sanctity. Theories about Innocent's death are gripping. Some claim Louis XIV's agents poisoned him, though his documented illness suggests natural causes. Others argue his ascetic lifestyle, including fasting, weakened his constitution. A compelling theory posits that Innocent received secret intelligence about Ottoman plans, possibly from Jesuit spies, shaping his military strategy. Innocent XV's resolute leadership saved Europe from Ottoman conquest, but left him isolated among European powers. 4. Alexander VIII, 1689-1691. Next, we meet Alexander VIII, born Pietro Ottoboni in 1610 in Venice, Italy, a seasoned cardinal, who became pope in 1689 at age 79. His brief papacy was marked by attempts to restore papal prestige after Innocent XV's austere reign. Alexander was a patron of the arts, enriching the Vatican Library with manuscripts and supporting Venetian culture. He also sought to ease tensions with France, reconciling with Louis XIV over Gallican disputes. However, Alexander's nepotism, favoring Ottoboni relatives, undermined his reforms, and his financial policies strained papal coffers. His diplomatic efforts to counter Ottoman threats continued Innocent's legacy, but lacked vigor due to his age. Alexander died in 1691, likely of pneumonia or heart failure at age 80, after a pontificate too short to leave a lasting mark. Theories about Alexander's end are intriguing. Some suggest his rapid death was due to poison from anti-Venetian factions, though his age makes natural causes likely. Others claim his reconciliation with France was a facade, hiding a secret deal to curb Habsburg power. A curious theory posits that Alexander's library acquisitions included forbidden texts, sparking rumors of esoteric interests. Alexander VIII's brief reign was a bridge between reform and excess, reflecting a transitional era. 5. Innocent II, 1691-1700. We close with Innocent II, born Antonio Pignatelli in 1615 in Spinazzola, Italy, a diplomat and reformer who became Pope in 1691. Innocent's papacy was a return to the reformist zeal of Innocent XI, focusing on curbing nepotism and strengthening church governance. His 1692 Bull Romanum Decet Pontificem banned nepotism, a landmark decree that reshaped papal administration. Innocent mediated European conflicts, including the War of the League of Augsburg, and supported missionary efforts in Asia and the Americas. His frugal lifestyle and commitment to justice earned him respect, though his health limited bold initiatives. Innocent died in 1700, likely of gout or organ failure, at age 85, leaving a legacy of integrity and reform. Theories about Innocent's death are compelling. Some believe his anti-nepotism stance provoked enemies who hastened his end, though his age suggests natural decline. Others argue he maintained a secret correspondence with Asian missionaries, influencing Vatican policy toward China. A fascinating theory claims Innocent's reforms were inspired by a near-death vision, undocumented but whispered among cardinals. Innocent XII's principled reign restored papal dignity, closing the I century with hope. Clement XVIII, 1700-1721. We begin with Clement XV, born Giovanni Francesco Albani in 1649 in Urbino, Italy, a scholar and diplomat from a noble family. Elected Pope in 1700, Clement was a cultured leader who faced a turbulent Europe during the War of the Spanish Succession. His papacy sought to maintain papal neutrality, mediating between France, Spain, and the Habsburgs, though his efforts often met with limited success due to the Church's waning political influence. Clement's reign was marked by his support for Jesuit missions, particularly in China, but his 1715 bull Ex illa Dei condemned Chinese rites, sparking controversy and hindering missionary work. He also promoted the arts, commissioning works in Rome, and strengthened the Vatican Library. Clement died in 1721, likely of heart failure or a stroke at age 71, after a 21-year pontificate that struggled to balance tradition and modernity. Theories about Clement's death are compelling. Some suggest his stress over the Chinese rites controversy, which alienated Jesuit allies, hastened his decline. Others claim he was poisoned by French agents unhappy with his neutrality, though no evidence supports this. A fascinating theory posits that Clement secretly corresponded with Chinese scholars, seeking a compromise on the rites, but destroyed these letters to avoid scandal. Clement XV's reign, caught between old and new, worlds left a legacy of resilience amid change. 2. Benedict XIII, 1724-1730. Next, we meet Benedict XIII, born Pietro Francesco Orsini in 1649 in Gravina, Italy, a Dominican friar from a noble family. Elected Pope in 1724 at age 75, Benedict was a pious but ineffective leader, more suited to prayer than politics. His papacy focused on spiritual renewal, promoting devotion to the Virgin Mary and canonizing saints, but his trust in corrupt advisors, particularly Cardinal Niccolò Cossia, led to financial mismanagement and scandal. Benedict's reign saw tensions with European powers, including France and Spain, over church rights. His attempts to reform the clergy were undermined by his inability to control the curia. Benedict died in 1730, likely of pneumonia or natural causes at age 81, leaving a papacy criticized for its chaos but admired for its sincerity. Theories about Benedict's end are intriguing. Some believe Cossia's mismanagement caused Benedict such distress that it weakened his health. Others suggest his death was hastened by a secret plot among cardinals to end his reign, though his age makes natural causes likely. A curious theory claims Benedict experienced mystical visions, recorded in a lost diary, which influenced his devotional policies. Benedict XIII's well-intentioned but troubled reign highlights the challenges of leading a divided church. Da Clement Hypotides, 1730-1740. Now we encounter Clement XIV, born Lorenzo Corsini in 1652 in Florence, Italy, a nobleman and administrator who became pope in 1730 at age 78. Despite blindness and frail health, Clement proved a determined leader, focusing on financial reform to recover from Benedict XV's mismanagement. He curbed nepotism, restored papal finances, and invested in Rome's infrastructure, commissioning the Trevi Fountain and expanding the Capitoline museums. Clement's papacy faced political challenges, including conflicts with Portugal and Spain over church privileges. He also issued the 1738 Bull in Eminenti, condemning Freemasonry a bold move against emerging Enlightenment ideas. Clement died in 1740, likely of gout or heart failure at age 87, after a decade of stabilizing the papacy. Theories about Clement's death are gripping. Some suggest his anti-Freemasonry stance provoked enemies who poisoned him, though his advanced age points to natural causes. Others argue his blindness was exaggerated by rivals to undermine his authority, a tactic that failed. A fascinating theory posits that Clement's financial reforms uncovered a secret Vatican treasury, its fate unknown after his death. Clement XIII's resilient reign strengthened the Church, despite personal and political obstacles. 4. Benedict XIV, 1740-1758. Next we meet Benedict XIV, born Prospero Lambertini in 1675, in Bologna, Italy, a scholar and canon lawyer who became Pope in 1740. Known as the Enlightened Pope, Benedict was a progressive leader who embraced intellectual discourse while defending Catholic doctrine. His papacy balanced Enlightenment ideas with church tradition, promoting science, reforming seminaries, and engaging with scholars like Voltaire, who admired him. Benedict's reign saw diplomatic successes, including concordats with Spain, Portugal, and Naples, securing church rights. He also issued encyclicals on liturgy and missions, and his legal writings influenced canon law. Benedict died in 1758, likely of a respiratory infection or heart ailment, at age 83 after a long and respected pontificate. Theories about Benedict's end are intriguing. Some believe his openness to Enlightenment ideas provoked conservative cardinals who hastened his death, though evidence is thin. Others suggest his correspondence with Voltaire included secret proposals for church reform, destroyed after his death. A compelling theory claims Benedict supported early scientific experiments in the Vatican, a fact obscured to avoid controversy. Benedict XIV's enlightened reign bridged faith and reason, leaving a lasting intellectual legacy. 5. Clement XIII, 1758-1769. We close with Clement XIII, born Carlo Rezzonico in 1693 in Venice, Italy, a nobleman and administrator who became Pope in 1758. Clement's papacy was marked by his defense of the Jesuit order against growing secular attacks. European powers, including France and Spain, pressured him to suppress the Jesuits, blaming them for political interference. Clement resisted, issuing the 1765 bull Apostolicum Pascendi to affirm their mission. His reign faced Enlightenment challenges, with monarchs asserting control over national churches. Clement's devotion to traditional Catholicism limited his diplomatic flexibility, isolating the papacy. He died suddenly in 1769, likely of a stroke or heart attack, at age 75, on the eve of a conclave to address the Jesuit issue, leaving the Church in crisis. Theories about Clement's death are dramatic. Many believe his death was suspiciously timed, with rumors of poisoning by anti-Jesuit factions, though his age suggests natural causes. Others argue his stress over the Jesuit controversy triggered a fatal collapse. A curious theory posits that Clement hid secret Jesuit documents in the Vatican, detailing their global influence, which were destroyed after his death. Clement XII's steadfast defense of the Jesuits defined his reign, but his death marked a turning point for the Church. Pius VI, 1775-1799. We begin with Pius VI, born Giovanni Angelo Braschi in 1717 in Cesena, Italy, a nobleman and diplomat who became Pope in 1775. His papacy, one of the longest in history, was marked by lavish patronage and political turmoil. Pius VI embellished Rome with neoclassical monuments, like the Trevi Fountain's completion, but his reign coincided with the Enlightenment's challenge to church authority and the French Revolution's upheaval. Pius's attempts to maintain papal influence faltered as revolutionary France seized church lands and demanded secular reforms. In 1798, French troops occupied Rome, declaring a republic. Pius was arrested, exiled to France, and treated harshly. He died in 1799 in Valence, likely of stroke or heart failure, at age 81, a prisoner of the revolution. His death marked a low point for the papacy's temporal power. Theories about Pius's death are dramatic. Some believe French revolutionaries deliberately neglected his health to hasten his end, though his age supports natural causes. Others suggest he smuggled secret messages to European monarchs, plotting a counter-revolution, which were intercepted. A fascinating theory posits that Pius hid Vatican treasures before his arrest, their location lost with his death. Pius' six-day reign, a blend of splendor and tragedy, saw the church humbled by revolutionary tides. Pius VII, 1800–1823. Next we meet Pius VII, born Barnaba Chiaramonti in 1742 in Cesena, Italy, a Benedictine monk who became pope in 1800. Elected in exile in Venice due to French occupation, Pius faced the Napoleonic era's challenges. His papacy was defined by his complex relationship with Napoleon Bonaparte, who sought to control the church. In 1801, Pius negotiated the Concordat with France, restoring Catholic worship but granting Napoleon influence over bishops. Tensions escalated when Pius refused to join Napoleon's blockade against Britain. In 1809, Napoleon annexed the Papal States and imprisoned Pius in Savona and Fontainebleau. Despite pressure, Pius resisted, earning respect for his defiance. Released in 1814 after Napoleon's fall, he restored the Jesuit order and rebuilt papal authority. Pius died in 1823, likely of complications from a fall at age 81 after a long and resilient reign. Theories about Pius's death are compelling. Some claim his imprisonment left him with chronic illnesses, hastened by the fall. Others suggest Napoleon's agents plotted to poison him during captivity, though he survived. A curious theory posits that Pius kept a secret diary of his imprisonment, detailing Napoleon's private confessions, which was destroyed by loyal cardinals. Pius VII's steadfastness preserved the church through a stormy era. 3. Leo XIII, 1823–1829. Now we encounter Leo XIII, born Annibale della Genga in 1760 in Genga, Italy, a nobleman and diplomat who became pope in 1823. Leo's papacy aimed to restore traditional Catholicism in a post-Napoleonic world. A conservative, he reinforced church discipline, curbed secular influences, and promoted education through Jesuit-run schools. His 1824 Jubilee year drew pilgrims to Rome, revitalizing spiritual fervor. Leo's strict policies, including bans on liberal ideas and Jewish rights, alienated moderates and fueled unrest in the Papal States. His health, frail from youth, limited his effectiveness. Leo died in 1829, likely of pneumonia or heart failure, at age 68, after a short but polarizing reign. His death was mourned by conservatives, but welcomed by reformers. Theories about Leo's end are intriguing. Some believe his conservative policies provoked a secret plot by liberal factions, though his documented illness suggests natural causes. Others argue his Jubilee year was a cover for financial schemes to fund anti-revolutionary efforts. A fascinating theory claims Leo received prophetic warnings about his death, influencing his rush to enact reforms. Leo XIII's rigid reign reflected a church clinging to tradition amid change. 4. Pius VIII, 1829–1830. Next, we meet Pius VIII, born Francesco Saverio Castiglioni in 1761 in Singoli, Italy, a scholar and bishop who became pope in 1829. Elected at age 67, Pius's brief papacy was a transitional one, overshadowed by his frail health and political unrest in Europe. He sought to balance Leo XIII's conservatism with moderation, supporting Catholic education and missionary work while cautiously engaging with liberal movements. Pius faced challenges from the 1830 revolutions, which sparked uprisings in the Papal States. His condemnation of secret societies like the Carbonari reflected his fear of secularism. Pius died in 1830, likely of a chronic illness, possibly cancer or heart disease, at age 69 after just 20 months as pope, leaving little time to shape the church. Theories about Pius's death are gripping. Some suggest his rapid decline was due to poison by revolutionary sympathizers, though his health issues were well known. Others argue his moderate stance angered conservative cardinals who neglected his care. A curious theory posits that Pius discovered a secret Vatican archive detailing revolutionary plots which he planned to expose before his death. Pius XIII's short reign was a fleeting pause in a turbulent era. 5. Gregory XVI, 1831–1846. We close with Gregory XVI, born Bartolomeo Capillari in 1765 in Belluno, Italy, a Camaldolese monk who became pope in 1831. A staunch conservative, Gregory's papacy resisted the liberal revolutions sweeping Europe. He condemned democratic ideas in his 1832 encyclical Mirari Vos, rejecting freedom of conscience and press as threats to Catholic order. His rule over the Papal States was authoritarian, suppressing revolts with Austrian aid. Gregory supported global missions, particularly in Asia and Africa, and canonized saints to bolster faith. His financial mismanagement, however, strained papal resources. Gregory died in 1846, likely of facial cancer or a stroke, at age 80, leaving a church resistant to modernity but spiritually active. Theories about Gregory's end are dramatic. Some believe liberal revolutionaries poisoned him, though his illness was documented. Others suggest his opposition to railroads in the Papal States stemmed from a secret fear of technological espionage. A compelling theory claims Gregory maintained a hidden network of informants to monitor liberal movements, whose reports were destroyed after his death. Gregory XVI's conservative reign fortified the Church's core, but isolated it from a changing world. Pius IX, 1846–1878. We begin with Pius IX, born Giovanni Maria Mastai Ferretti in 1792 in Senigallia, Italy, a nobleman who became the longest reigning pope in history. Elected in 1846, Pius IX started as a liberal, granting reforms in the Papal States, but the 1848 revolutions turned him conservative. His papacy saw the loss of the Papal States to Italian unification, confining the papacy to the Vatican after 1870, a situation formalized by the prisoner of the Vatican stance. Pius's reign was monumental. He convened the First Vatican Council, 1869–1870, proclaiming papal infallibility, a divisive doctrine. He issued the Syllabus of Errors, 1864, condemning liberalism and secularism. His devotion to the Virgin Mary led to the 1854 dogma of the Immaculate Conception. Pius died in 1878, likely of heart failure or bronchitis at age 85, after 32 years as pope, revered by traditionalists but criticized by liberals. Theories about Pius's death are intriguing. Some suggest his long reign and stress over losing the Papal States weakened his health. Others claim Italian nationalists plotted to poison him, though his age supports natural causes. A fascinating theory posits that Pius hid secret negotiations with Italian leaders to preserve Vatican autonomy, destroyed after his death. Pius IX's transformative reign shaped the modern papacy, balancing tradition with crisis. 2. Leo XIII, 1878–1903. Next, we meet Leo III, born Vincenzo Gioacchino Pecci in 1810 in Carpineto Romano, Italy, a scholar and diplomat who became pope in 1878. Known as the Pope of the Working Man, Leo's papacy bridged the church with modernity. His 1891 encyclical Rerum Novarum addressed social justice, defending workers' rights, and critiquing both capitalism and socialism, laying the foundation for Catholic social teaching. Leo's diplomatic skill restored Vatican prestige, improving relations with Germany, France, and even secular Italy. He promoted Thomistic philosophy, revitalizing Catholic intellectual life, and opened Vatican archives to scholars. Leo died in 1903, likely of pneumonia at age 93, after a 25-year reign, one of the longest and most influential in history. Theories about Leo's end are compelling. Some believe his progressive encyclicals provoked conservative cardinals who neglected his care, though his age suggests natural decline. Others argue he secretly met with socialist leaders, influencing Rerum Novarum, a claim unproven but whispered in Rome. A curious theory posits that Leo's archival openness revealed Vatican secrets, quickly reburied after his death. Leo XIII's enlightened reign modernized the Church, leaving a legacy of wisdom. 3. Pius X, 1903-1914. Now, we encounter Pius X, born Giuseppe Melchiorre Sarto in 1835 in Riese, Italy, a humble priest from a poor family who became pope in 1903. A staunch traditionalist, Pius sought to restore all things in Christ. His papacy focused on spiritual renewal, lowering the age for First Communion, reforming the breviary, and codifying canon law. His 1907 encyclical Pascendi Dominici Gregis condemned modernism, targeting progressive theologians, sparking controversy. Pius's reign avoided political entanglements, but his anti-modernist crusade alienated intellectuals. As World War I loomed, he urged peace but saw tensions rise. Pius died in 1914, likely of a heart attack at age 79, days after the war began, reportedly heartbroken by the conflict. He was canonized in 1954. Theories about Pius's death are gripping. Many believe his grief over the war's outbreak triggered his fatal collapse. Others suggest modernist sympathizers in the Curia hastened his end, though no evidence supports poisoning. A fascinating theory claims Pius had prophetic visions of the war, recorded in a lost journal, influencing his peace pleas. Pius X's pious reign fortified tradition, but struggled with a changing world. 4. Benedict XV, 1914-1922. Next, we meet Benedict XV, born Giacomo della Chiesa in 1854 in Genoa, Italy, a diplomat and scholar who became pope in 1914, weeks after World War I began. Known as the Pope of Peace, Benedict's papacy was defined by his tireless efforts to end the war. His 1917 peace plan, though ignored by belligerents, earned respect, and he provided humanitarian aid to war victims, regardless of faith. Benedict also addressed post-war challenges, issuing the 1917 Code of Canon Law and promoting missions. His diplomatic neutrality alienated both Allied and Central powers, limiting his influence. Benedict died in 1922, likely of pneumonia at age 67, after a short but impactful reign, leaving the Church stronger spiritually but politically sidelined. Theories about Benedict's end are intriguing. Some believe his intense war efforts and rejection by world leaders weakened his health. Others suggest wartime spies, fearing his peace initiatives tampered with his care, though pneumonia is well documented. A curious theory posits that Benedict secretly negotiated with Ottoman leaders to protect Christians, a deal buried after his death. Benedict XV's compassionate reign shone amid war's darkness. 5. Pius XI, 1922-1939. We close with Pius XV, born Achille Ratti in 1857 in Desio, Italy, a scholar and librarian who became pope in 1922. His papacy navigated the rise of totalitarianism, confronting fascism, communism, and Nazism. His 1929 Lateran Treaty with Mussolini established Vatican City as a sovereign state, resolving the Roman question and securing papal independence. Pius's encyclicals, like Quadragesimo Anno, 1931, on social justice and Mit brennender Sorge, 1937, against Nazism, showcased his moral courage. He promoted Catholic action and missions, but faced criticism for his initial tolerance of fascism. Pius died in 1939, likely of heart failure, at age 81, on the eve of World War II, leaving a church braced for conflict. Theories about Pius's death are dramatic. Some claim Nazi or fascist agents poisoned him, fearing his anti-totalitarian stance, though his heart condition is documented. Others suggest he planned a secret encyclical against anti-Semitism, suppressed after his death. A compelling theory posits that Pius's Vatican archives held evidence of early Nazi resistance, hidden to protect collaborators. Pius XV's bold reign fortified the Church against tyranny, but his death marked a somber transition. Pius V, 1939-1958. We begin with Pius V, Born Eugenio Pacelli in 1876 in Rome, Italy, a diplomat and scholar who became Pope in 1939, just before World War II. Known for his reserved demeanor, Pius's papacy was defined by the war's moral dilemmas. He maintained Vatican neutrality, issuing cautious statements against violence, but avoiding explicit condemnation of the Nazis. His 1942 Christmas address alluded to Holocaust atrocities, but his silence on specifics sparked debate. Post-war, he condemned communism, shaping the Church's Cold War stance. Pius's reign saw spiritual initiatives, like defining the Assumption of Mary in 1950, and he used radio broadcasts to reach the faithful. His health declined in the 1950s, and he died in 1958, likely of heart failure, at age 82, after a 19-year pontificate. His legacy remains polarizing, praised for quiet diplomacy, but criticized for inaction during the Holocaust. Theories about Pius's death are compelling. Some suggest his stress over war criticisms weakened his heart. Others claim Nazi or Soviet agents poisoned him, though medical records support natural causes. A fascinating theory posits that Pius maintained a secret network to aid Jews, with records hidden in Vatican archives. Pius XIII's enigmatic reign continues to spark debate over his wartime role. 2. John XXIII, 1958-1963. Next we meet John XXIII, born Angelo Giuseppe Roncalli in 1881 in Sotto il Monte, Italy, a humble priest who became Pope in 1958 at age 76. Known as the Good Pope, John's papacy was a breath of fresh air. His warmth and openness contrasted with Pius XII's formality. His greatest achievement was convening the Second Vatican Council Vatican II in 1962, aiming to modernize the Church, update liturgy, and foster ecumenism. John's encyclicals like Mater et Magistra, 1961, on social justice, reflected his pastoral heart. His mediation during the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis earned global respect. John died in 1963, likely of stomach cancer at age 81, before Vatican II's completion, but his vision transformed the Church. He was canonized in 2014. Theories about John's death are intriguing. Some believe his cancer was accelerated by the stress of Vatican II's contentious debates. Others suggest conservative cardinals, opposed to his reforms, neglected his care, though medical evidence points to natural causes. A curious theory claims John kept a private journal of prophetic insights, influencing his council decision, which was lost after his death. John XXIII's joyful reign opened the Church to the modern world. 3. Paul VI, 1963-1978. Now we encounter Paul VI, born Giovanni Battista Montini in 1897 in Concesio, Italy, a scholar and Vatican official who became Pope in 1963. Paul's papacy was defined by guiding Vatican II to completion, implementing its reforms, including vernacular liturgy and ecumenical outreach. His 1968 encyclical Humanae Vitae, reaffirming the Church's ban on contraception, sparked controversy, alienating some Catholics but rallying traditionalists. Paul navigated the turbulent 1960s and 1970s, addressing social unrest and secularism. His diplomatic efforts, like visiting the United Nations in 1965, elevated the Vatican's global voice. Paul died in 1978, likely of a heart attack at age 80, after a 15-year reign marked by reform and division. He was canonized in 2018. Theories about Paul's death are gripping. Some claim the backlash to Humanae Vitae caused him such anguish that it triggered his heart attack. Others suggest progressive factions plotted against him, though his health issues were documented. A compelling theory posits that Paul secretly met with dissident theologians, seeking a compromise on contraception, but burned these records. Paul VI's complex reign bridged tradition and change, leaving a divided church. 4. John Paul IV, 1978. Next we meet John Paul IV, born Albino Luciani in 1912 in Canale d'Agordo, Italy, a pastoral priest who became Pope in 1978. Known as the Smiling Pope, John Paul IV's 33-day papacy was one of the shortest in history. Elected as a compromise candidate, he charmed the world with his humility and plans to simplify the papacy. He aimed to continue Vatican II's reforms and address Vatican Bank scandals. John Paul I died suddenly in 1978, likely of a heart attack, at age 65, found in his bed with reading material. The Vatican's secretive handling of his death fueled speculation, despite medical reports confirming natural causes. His brief reign left little impact but inspired affection, and he is considered for sainthood. Theories about John Paul I's death are sensational. Many believe he was poisoned by Vatican insiders, fearing his financial reforms, though autopsies were not conducted. Others suggest his heart attack was induced by stress over discovering Vatican corruption. A wild theory claims he drafted a secret encyclical on poverty, destroyed after his death. John Paul I's fleeting reign remains a poignant mystery. 5. John Paul II, 1978-2005. We close with John Paul II, born Karol Wojtyła in 1920 in Wadowicz, Poland, a dynamic priest who became Pope in 1978, the first non-Italian in 455 years. His 27-year papacy was transformative, marked by global outreach, theological conservatism, and charisma. He traveled to over 100 countries, drawing millions, and played a key role in communism's fall, particularly in Poland. John Paul's encyclicals, like Centesimus Annus 1991, addressed social issues, and his apology for church historical wrongs promoted healing. He survived a 1981 assassination attempt, but suffered from Parkinson's disease in later years. John Paul died in 2005, likely of septic shock and organ failure at age 84, mourned worldwide. He was canonized in 2014. Theories about John Paul's death are dramatic. Some believe his 1981 shooting left lasting health damage, hastening his end. Others suggest conservative factions opposed his ecumenical outreach, though his illness was public. A compelling theory posits that he planned a secret meeting with Muslim leaders to foster peace, cancelled due to his decline. John Paul II's vibrant reign reshaped the Church for a global era. Urban VII, 1590. We begin with Urban VII, born Giovanni Battista Castagna in 1521 in Rome, Italy, a diplomat and scholar who holds the record for the shortest papacy in history. Elected Pope in September 1590, Urban was a reform-minded leader, with a reputation for piety and integrity. As a cardinal, he served as a governor and inquisitor, earning respect for his fairness. His brief reign promised to curb corruption and strengthen the Counter-Reformation, building on Sixtus Fiat's legacy. Urban planned to improve Rome's sanitation and support the poor, but his papacy lasted just 13 days. He died in 1590, likely of malaria, at age 69, before his coronation, leaving his reforms unfulfilled. His sudden death shocked the Church, and he was buried modestly in St. Peter's Basilica. Theories about Urban's death are compelling. Many believe his malaria was exacerbated by Rome's unsanitary conditions, which he aimed to address. Others suggest poisoning by rivals, fearing his anti-corruption stance, though no evidence supports this. A curious theory posits that Urban discovered financial irregularities in the Curia, and his death prevented their exposure. Urban VII's fleeting reign remains a poignant what might have been in papal history. 2. Pius III, 1503. Next, we meet Pius III, born Francesco Todeschini Piccolomini in 1439 in Siena, Italy, a nephew of Pius III and a scholar of canon law. Elected Pope in September 1503, Pius was a compromise candidate after Alexander VI's scandalous reign. Known for his piety and moderation, Pius aimed to reform the Church, curb nepotism, and restore papal prestige. His election followed a contentious conclave with hopes he would heal divisions. Pius's papacy lasted only 26 days, one of the shortest on record. Plagued by gout and frail health, he died in October 1503, likely of a leg infection or heart failure at age 64. His brief reign achieved little, but his reputation for integrity endured. He was buried in St. Peter's. later transferred to Sant'Andrea della Valle. Theories about Pius's death are intriguing. Some believe his gout was worsened by stress from factional rivalries in the Curia. Others suggest poisoning by Borgia. Loyalists, fearing his reforms, though his documented illness points to natural causes. A fascinating theory claims Pius planned a secret synod to address church corruption, cancelled by his death. Pius III's short reign was a fleeting hope for renewal amid Renaissance turmoil. 3. Pius of 1559 to 1565. Now we encounter Pius IV, born Giovanni Angelo Medici in 1499 in Milan, Italy, a lawyer from a lesser branch of the Medici family. Elected Pope in 1559, Pius was a pragmatic reformer who guided the Counter-Reformation's climax. His greatest achievement was reconvening and concluding the Council of Trent, 1562-1563, which solidified Catholic doctrine, reformed clergy, and countered Protestantism, shaping the Church for centuries. Pius's diplomacy balanced tensions with Spain and France, and his patronage supported Michelangelo's work on St. Peter's. His nepotism, favoring Medici relatives, drew criticism, but his reforms strengthened papal authority. Pius died in 1565, likely of a fever or infection, at age 66 after a productive reign. He was buried in Santa Maria degli Angeli. Theories about Pius's death are gripping. Some suggest his fever was induced by enemies of Trent's reforms, though medical records indicate natural causes. Others argue his nepotism hid a secret plan to elevate Milan's influence, thwarted by his death. A compelling theory posits that Pius kept a private archive of Trent's debates, revealing compromises later suppressed. Pius IV's steady leadership fortified the Church against Protestant tides. 4. Benedict XVI, 2005-2013. Next, we meet Benedict XVI, born Joseph Ratzinger in 1927 in Marktal, Germany, a theologian and scholar who became Pope in 2005. The first German Pope in centuries, Benedict was a conservative intellectual, known for his role as John Paul II's doctrinal enforcer. His papacy focused on defending Catholic orthodoxy, addressing secularism, and promoting a new evangelization in a post-Christian West. Benedict's reign faced controversies, including clergy abuse scandals and a 2006 speech in Regensburg that sparked Muslim backlash. His encyclicals, like Caritas in Veritate, 2009, tackled social issues, and he embraced digital media to reach youth. In 2013, Benedict shocked the world by resigning, the first pope to do so since Celestine the Fave, citing health and age. He lived as Pope Emeritus in the Vatican, dying in 2022 at age 95, likely of heart failure or natural decline. Theories about Benedict's resignation and death are dramatic. Some believe he resigned under pressure from liberal cardinals over abuse scandals, though he cited health. Others suggest his Regensburg speech provoked secret threats, influencing his decision. A fascinating theory claims Benedict left a hidden theological manuscript outlining his vision for the Church, yet to be revealed. Benedict XVI's cerebral reign bridged tradition and modernity, ending in historic humility. 5. Francis, 2013-present. We close with Francis, born Jorge Mario Bergoglio in 1936 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, a Jesuit priest who became Pope in 2013, the first non-European in over a millennium. Known for his humility, Francis took the name of St. Francis of Assisi, signaling a focus on poverty and simplicity. His papacy has emphasized mercy, environmental stewardship, and dialogue with other faiths, reshaping the Church's global image. Francis's encyclicals like Laudato Si, 2015 on climate change, and his 2016 exhortation Amoris Laetitia stirred debate by softening pastoral approaches to divorce and remarriage. His handling of clergy abuse and Vatican finances faced criticism, but his outreach to marginalized groups won hearts. As of 2025, Francis, age 88, remains active despite health challenges, including respiratory issues and mobility limitations. Since he is alive, we focus on his life and potential legacy. Theories about Francis's papacy are vibrant. Some believe his progressive reforms mask a secret conservative agenda to preserve church unity. Others suggest he faces internal Vatican plots to curb his influence, echoing historical papal intrigues. A compelling theory posits that Francis has drafted a secret plan for papal succession, ensuring his vision endures. Francis's dynamic reign continues to challenge and inspire, a fitting capstone to our papal saga. And so, we conclude the 10th and final chapter of this papal saga. From Urban VII's fleeting days to Francis's global mission, these popes navigated centuries of faith, power, and change, leaving legacies that shape the Church today. Our journey through 50 popes, from martyrs to modernizers, reveals a tapestry of devotion, controversy, and mystery. Thank you for joining this historic adventure.